Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Podcast Period, the internet's worst podcast. With me today is my co-host, David.
Hi, guys.
And my friend, Anthony from Something Ghoulish.
Hello.
So, there's not really any plan for this episode except for we're gonna interview Anthony a little bit and then hop right into some random topics. Hopefully this isn't a disaster. If it is, blame anybody else but me. So yeah, let's get into it. I'll start with the first question I've got written down. What would people be surprised to find on your Spotify account, Anthony?
That's a really good question. Actually, it's funny enough, I have been really enjoying the La La Land soundtrack. So I've been really listening to that lately.
La La Land is a musical, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Musical
Okay.
By Damien Chazelle. I don't know if he wrote the music for it, but yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of musicals, but my favorite, actually probably the only musical I've really ever enjoyed is Fiddler on the Roof. It is great.
Solid.
I don't know if you've seen it, but it's on Amazon Prime if you ever get the hankering to watch another musical.
Okay, rad. Yeah, I'm not a super big musical guy either. Most of what I listen to is kind of some classic rock and metal and a little bit of kind of rap here and there. So musical is definitely out of my element. But I don't know, La La Land is just absolutely phenomenal. So that would probably shock some people, especially in the horror community.
Considering everything else you just listed, yeah, I would say probably so.
Yeah. So I definitely have a big spectrum of music that I listen to.
All right, David?
Alrighty. Tell us just a random fact or an interesting tidbit about you, something that most people wouldn't know.
This is going to be hard because obviously you're always going to be your worst critic and think there's probably nothing interesting about yourself. Let's see. I don't know. Okay, so here's a small little strange thing. I don't really mind driving anywhere as long as it's under 10 hours. And I know that seems like a lot of time to drive somewhere, but I don't know. Sometimes it's I woke up one morning a year or two ago, and obviously I'm based here in Orlando, and I was just I think it'd be cool to go to Savannah, Georgia today. And so I just went to Savannah for the day, and it was a 4-hour drive, and then enjoyed that, and then drove back home and got home at 3 a.m. So yeah, I like driving.
Yeah, I think I did a really long, I did a really long distance drive from Tennessee to Florida. I think Tennessee is probably, 10 hours is probably right where I start to get man, I don't know if this is worth it anymore.
Yeah, right after 10 hours is when it becomes hell. I a year or two ago, I had a friend who was playing this music festival in, I think, Austin, Texas. And that's a 15-hour drive, and we ended up doing that and just pretty much going nonstop, which was murder. Yeah, we left Orlando at 10 p.m., got to New Orleans at 7, I think, a.m. for breakfast, and then continued driving. And it was just one of the things when you're driving while you're tired and you're kind of slowly nodding off and you're shaking and doing everything to stay awake. Yeah, not fun.
Been there, done that. That's not fun at all. I think I'm probably a little bit more lenient with the 10-hour mark. I just love driving. It doesn't matter what it is, how long it is. I think the only really bad experience that I can think of with that would be coming from Orlando going home, and it just seemed like every single thing was against us. We were going to do it in one shot, and from Orlando to the part of Tennessee that we were going, it's not that long. In fact, when we did it coming back from Ben's wedding, it only took like 12 hours, I think. It was not that bad. It took us 24 hours on that first trip. Rain, traffic, everything. It's like, this is a trip from hell. This is just, oh my God.
A sign from God.
Basically, yeah.
It was just the perfect ending to a trip that I really wasn't happy with anyways. It's like, you know what? I'm never going back to Florida again. And
that's probably a
that
good
didn't
call.
work. Thanks, Ben.
You're welcome, David. No problem. Anytime. Okay. So my next question. What 3 horror movies would you recommend to a newcomer to the genre?
Ooh, that's fun. Let's see. New horror movies. I would say maybe like I don't know, I gotta put some variety in there. So maybe like Return of the Living Dead is one of my all-time favorites. Like this 1980s punk zombie film. That's kind of a spin-off of the original Night of the Living Dead. It's just all these like punk teenagers kind of end up like getting infected, and they end up having to kind of like burn a body, and it's kind of this perfect like horror comedy. Definitely more on the horror side of things, but so Return of the Living Dead is a phenomenal example. I'm looking up because I have all my DVDs above me. Maybe Creepshow. Creepshow is like a super fun anthology by obviously like Stephen King and George Romero, and some effects by Tom Savini in there. And I don't know. I feel like I want to throw a twist in there. If you want something a little bit darker and a little bit different, maybe Hell House LLC. It's super interesting and clever found footage horror flick. These people are like putting together this Halloween haunted house, and someone actually like killed themselves in the house prior to them actually putting the haunted house there, and it actually is haunted. So all the kind of backdrops of the Halloween haunted house play for scares, and you don't know what's gonna pop out, and it works really well. So yeah, definitely recommend that too.
Okay, cool. That sounds good. I'm definitely gonna have to check at least one of those out.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What is your next question, David?
Well, I was actually going to do something else, but now I've got a a thought going on. When you describe horror, or your definition of it, or what you like, is it more of like the creepy, strange events type stuff, like things happening that shouldn't be happening, or things like that, or is it more gore? Because the gore is what gets me, and I don't like it. Like entrails of humans spread up across whatever, or decapitations or stuff like that. That's the part of movies that I don't like. Scary movies, horror movies, whatever. The other stuff I'm cool with, but the gore I don't like. So what about you? What's your leaning on that?
It depends. So like in the early 2000s was kind of Eli Roth, if you guys are familiar. I'm not a big fan of his. He's made some okay films, and he did the original Cabin Fever film, which was kind of big for a lot of people. And he relies heavily on gore. And I don't know. I feel like when there's complete leniency, or not leniency, but you're completely leaning on gore as your scare factor, I don't know. I feel like it falls through, and it just ends up becoming a spectacle and getting to the point where you're watching something maybe like Street Trash, where it ends up just becoming like this schlock fest of like, you know, body parts, and yeah, it just becomes kind of fun to that degree. But I don't know. I would define horror as whatever thing pushes us away from what's taboo, which obviously, like, one of the biggest taboo things is death, of course. So I don't know. I'm not super big into gore films, especially when they lean heavily on that's the main scare factor. Like one good example that's super popular that hopefully everyone has seen by now is A24's Hereditary from last year. There's not a lot of gore in that film, but there's some major set pieces in that where, like, you know, spoilers, and if you haven't seen already, it's your own fault. A girl gets decapitated from like a lamppost sign, and you know, you get like maybe a 10-second close up, and you have to look at her decapitated head with like ants crawling all over it, and like, you know, skin missing from her gums, and it's like fucking gnarly and disturbing. But it feels like that is kind of, that gore is put on a leash, and it's kept at a distance in a way where it doesn't give you everything, but it gives you just enough to where you kind of empathize with that pain, or it makes you kind of cringe and want to look away. But for the most of the film, it's like a family drama, which is, I think, the most interesting part. So yeah, I think when people are maybe more tactful with their gore, it can cause some really disturbing reactions from audiences, for sure.
Yeah, I think I was gonna bring up when you mentioned that you weren't like a real huge fan of gore, David. I was gonna bring up us playing through Outlast, because that video game, even though it's a different vehicle for horror, is like absolutely filled to the brim with gore all over the place. And I was the one that was freaked out the most by it. I think.
I don't know if it was the jump scares and that, or something that, because you're right, you're absolutely right. You could not go through that like I could. I don't know. That game just didn't bother me that much. It's just, I don't know. Maybe it's a different thing. But like in movies and stuff, like the best example I can think of, and I apologize if you don't consider this like a horror genre or anything, Anthony, because I'm not really big into it, but like Scary Movie, it's just cutting up bodies and things like that, and it's just it's stupid to me, and I don't get it. I don't get when it's heavily relied on that, because I get squeamish when I hear like bones snap and like pop out of arms and and things like that. That's what gets me, and maybe that's not what happened in Outlast, so maybe that's why I was okay with it, with the exception of the fingers being cut off. That got to me. But everything else, it was just looking at gore, but it wasn't actually happening. Maybe it's the action of it, or hearing the bones do things that they're not supposed to, that really gets me, because or eyes popping out. It's like, oh no, and I literally have to turn my head away from that. It's like, nope, not doing that.
Yeah,
I think with something like Dead Space, you know, you go through maybe a 20-hour long playthrough of a game like that, and you're exposed to like all the necromorphs like so frequently, to a point where it's like, okay, well, it's just an enemy at this point, you know, it's just kind of nothing. Like, unlike the first time you play it and the first time you're exposed to an enemy, it's absolutely terrifying, and then by the end of it, you're just kind of like, it becomes habitual. But yeah, like Scary Movie, I mean, that's the point of like parody, like horror parody, which is you know, is fun in its own right. So it depends. It really does depend. I feel like if directors and like effects creators can hold back the gore to a degree where it's not on full display, that's, I think, when you can get the most reaction out of people, is when it feels like so rare that it feels real. And I think that's the scariest part.
So don't overdo it.
Yeah, for sure. Which, like, you know,
desensitize people to it.
Yeah. And I think, like, you know, as I mentioned earlier with taboos, like, that's kind of the big thing with horror, is like everyone finds certain things more taboo than, you know, something else. And like, you know, gore may be not as taboo to someone as maybe like spiders, or I don't know, like necrophilia or something like that, you know, whatever. But Yeah, I don't know.
I think everybody finds necrophilia pretty taboo, honestly.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Tell that to Jeffrey Dahmer, I guess.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So, piggybacking off of my previous question, what is your most favorite recent movie, horror or otherwise?
Most favorite recent one. I've probably like horror related, I guess. I would I've gushed a lot about Panos Cosmatos' Mandy film with Nicolas Cage as kind of the main header. I don't know if you guys have heard of that.
I think I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
No idea what it is.
Okay, all right.
Feel free
you
to
guys
explain.
Yeah, you guys are in for a treat then. So Mandy was a smaller release by Spectre Vision, Elijah Wood's production company.
Mm-hmm. You're talking Lord of the Rings, Elijah Wood?
Yeah. He's actually like a really big genre film fan, and he has his own kind of genre film production company. They produce such features as I believe Greasy Strangler.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is a phenomenal film, believe it or not. But yeah, so Mandy is basically set, I think, in the 1980s about this couple, Red and Mandy, who live in the woods and they're kind of in their own solitude. And Red is like a lumberjack, and Mandy kind of does fantasy artwork on the side of running this like convenience store. And one day she's walking down the road and someone in a van sees her, and this guy becomes kind of obsessed with her, and come to find out he is the leader of this cult. And he ends up sending his cult people to basically abduct Mandy and try and kill Red. And she ends up kind of laughing in the cult guy's face about how he's pathetic, and they end up murdering Mandy, and Red has to kind of go after the cult, who has this army of kind of like demon, like LSD laced bikers from hell. And so yeah, he just kind of loses his fucking mind, and it's absolutely nuts. It's super like saturated in reds and pinks and blues, and very similar to like Argento's Suspiria, and the entire soundtrack is this gorgeous like heavy metal deep rock, and it was done by I think Johann Robertson, I think that was his name, and forgive me if I'm wrong. It was like his last soundtrack that he scored, and he passed away shortly after. And it's just one of the best films to come out recently, and I was so enthralled with it. I absolutely loved it.
That sounds extremely fun, if not extremely good.
Yeah, it's fucking nuts. Like, like as a small little thing, I already told you Mandy dies by the hands of the cult. Mm-hmm. They burn her alive in front of Nicolas Cage's character, and he finally gets free after the cult's gone, and he goes into their bathroom, and he's a recovering alcoholic, and he ends up pulling out this drawer, pulling out a whole thing of vodka, and just kind of starts chugging it down, and for like a minute straight you just see him mentally break down, like screaming and crying in agony. And it's honestly like the best use of Nicolas Cage's acting skill in such a good way, though. Mm-hmm. Like he goes full Cage, but it's absolutely brilliant, and he pulls it off flawlessly.
So he's not like Nicolas Cage hulking out for no reason like he usually is, basically.
Right. Like this is like a man on the edge of, insanity, and it shows.
I'm glad somebody found a good use for Nicolas Cage's like roid rage.
Yeah. I went to the like a premiere they had, in Legion M is I think one of the promoters or distributors of the film, and they were handing out stuff at the premiere. And one of the things I got from them is this enamel pin of Nicolas Cage's face, like just covered in blood from the film. So I have that attached to my little like pencil holder on my desk.
That's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have another question for him, David?
Oh, give us an interesting fact with your friendship with Ben, or about your friendship with Ben.
Okay. Sure. Man, so I think our friendship probably started as probably back in maybe early middle school, I would think.
Something like that, yeah.
So we've kind of had connection on and off for about a decade. I would say at this point now. And yeah, so like Ben and I had a small little project before, and I kind of after school I had these small little things I was kind of doing and trying, and actually Ben ended up helping me write for this site I made about like pop culture news and such, and he was a contributing member of that, and actually a really kind of influential part of getting that started, which is pretty neat.
It was fun. It was fun working on that while it lasted.
I enjoyed
for
reading it.
So yeah, that was pretty cool. The site is down now, of course, and
Unfortunately.
yeah, but I think everyone has found their true calling, I guess, in that degree, which is kind of I don't know, happy ending, I guess.
Yeah, you with something ghoulish. Cole's got Gargantucast now, and Chris.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that everybody's definitely landed where they were supposed to.
Definitely, stepping stones.
All's well that ends well, right?
Exactly.
And this is like where like the part 2 of our movie starts, and then like something really shitty happens, and we all have to regroup, and we fight as friends, but we have to rekindle our friendship, and then go on an adventure, and it all starts all over again.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Every
Time loop.
Every direct to movie DVD or videotape sequel ever.
Yeah,
we're
there you go.
We're living Sharknado 8. We just don't know it yet.
How many are there now? Like 5, 4?
No, there are definitely like 7, I think.
Oh my goodness.
There's more than there has any right to be. They should have stopped at like 1.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure they had one called like Revenge of the Sixth.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I don't know if they had any more. I think the last one was just called like the Final One.
That breaks my heart.
I mean, honestly though, like good for Asylum for having like a franchise that was just like actually super profitable.
Oh my God, there actually is 6 of them.
Oh my goodness.
Sharknado 2, the second one, Sharknado 3, oh hell no. Sharknado, The Fourth Awakens, Sharknado 5, Global Warning, and I can't read this whole title. The Last Sharknado, It's About Time. For real.
That's awesome. I knew one of them was like a Star Wars joke.
Yeah. I don't understand it, but I do.
Goodness gracious.
Okay, so moving on from the quote-unquote interview section of the podcast, I've got an update of of something David and I talked about last episode. You may be familiar with this, Anthony. You might not be, but I'm going to give a basic gist of what we talked about, and then I'll go on with the update. So AT&T in select cities has started rolling out what they call 5GE, which stands for 5G Evolution, which basically amounts to nothing more than a little logo change on some of their flagship phones.
Right, yeah. I followed a little bit of this in like the tech news community that I follow.
Mm-hmm. So the update is that Sprint is now suing AT&T because apparently they've been working on building out their actual 5G infrastructure, and there's no phones that can take advantage of actual 5G that are out yet, with the exception of the Moto Z3 line, because they'll have a 5G add-on that you can add on to the back of the phone to give it the ability to connect to the 5G networks.
It's so pointless.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So that's where it would have stopped, except I was reading something earlier this week that was totally unrelated, and I found the CNET article titled, "Will the real 4G please stand up?" So apparently Sprint, back in what was this, 2010, was building a this was back when 4G wasn't even a thing, back in those wild early days of mobile internet. Sprint was actually building a technology called I guess it's WiMAX or WiMAX, that claimed that it was 4G. It is in fact not 4G. So it's kind of the I just found it interesting because it's kind of the same thing that AT&T is doing, that Sprint is suing them over, when they did the same thing not even 9 years ago.
Sprint has to make their money back.
Pretty much, yeah, basically.
I thought after we had concluded that rant of AT&T, I thought I was remembering back to somebody mislabeling something about 4G. I think it had to do with something. I thought it had to do with something with HSPA plus, but apparently
Yeah, I see.
not.
It should be noted. It says in the article, it should be noted that AT&T, which plans to test LTE next year, has also upgraded its network to HSPA plus.
Yeah. Okay.
However, they were not claiming that upgrade was 4G, which Sprint was. They were claiming this WiMAX thing was 4G, or is 4G. Whatever.
So they're guilty of doing the exact thing that they're going to try or are suing AT&T over.
Exactly.
Not even a decade later. Man, the hypocrisy there. Jeez.
Okay. So yeah, that's it for the updates that we have from last week's episode. We probably aren't going to be doing a whole lot of those, just because we're not like a news podcast or anything like that. But
it's just something worth mentioning.
Yeah, exactly. So what does anybody want to start with? Whatever topics they brought to the table. I've got a few, but
Anthony's the guest. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I've been really getting in, not musically, but really getting into the history of like the Norwegian black metal scene lately. And I've been doing a little bit of research on like the Lords of Chaos book, as well as like the documentary Until the Light Takes Us. I don't know if you guys know anything about
I think I know the Into the Chaos thing.
The Lords of Chaos.
Yeah. Go keep going. I think I know where you're going with this, but I don't want to tip your hand in case I'm right.
So they recently just made a film about it. Jonas Ackerlund, with he was actually a part of the Norwegian black metal band, I think Bathory, and the whole film based off the book, which is based on the true stories of things that really happened during the 1980s and 1990s in Norway. Just all these kids ended up kind of inventing Norwegian black metal music, and it became kind of this face for like all these crimes that these kids were like doing across Norway, to the point of like grave robbing and setting churches on fire and murdering multiple people. It's fucking nuts. Yeah.
I think wasn't, correct me if I'm wrong because I might be, but wasn't the Lords of Chaos, wasn't that about the band that had their lead singer kill themselves or something like that? And they used that as the cover?
Yeah, so the main band that is talked about a lot is called Mayhem.
Yes.
And their lead singer, his band name, he simply went by Dead, which is pretty on the nose.
Yeah.
And basically, he was just a really depressed kid. He had a lot kind of going on, and obviously he didn't get the help he needed. But he wanted to embody like Norwegian black metal to the point of like having to live it and kind of show people the stakes of it. So like at shows he would like slit his wrists and pour blood over people in the crowds. He'd like bury his clothes in like dirt, so he would kind of have like a corpse appearance. He would try and get his bandmates to carry him out on stage in like a coffin. And eventually, when no one was there, he ended up committing suicide. And when one of the bandmates came home, Euronymous, which is one of the main guys, instead of calling the police first, he ended up taking a photo and then calling the police and using that photo for their next album cover. And it's just him with his, skull out and everything. And I guess probably trigger warning for some people. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Probably just because of the era that the photo was taken. It's not extremely graphic, but you can definitely tell what's going on. I've seen it probably a couple times just because I've read about it on and off for a couple of years. It is a crazy story and a crazy picture, and it's definitely trigger warning, but it's I don't want to say interesting, but it is interesting. To look at what at least a little bit of a glimpse of what was going on back then.
Yeah, for sure. It's just a crazy real thing that happened, and people got killed, and it's unfortunate, and some people kind of got away with it. But if I guess who's ever listening, if you guys want to learn more, last podcast on the left did a 3-part series on the Norwegian black metal scene that you can check out, as well as the book Lords of Chaos, which is kind of a detailed version of all the events that happened.
Definitely go check that out. I was listening to your last podcast, Anthony, and it's kind of somewhat related.
Okay.
You guys were talking about remakes, and you happened to touch upon remakes that you guys liked or that you guys didn't like that some other people liked. So I wanted to bring up kind of that general idea. David and I have been watching movies together for, I don't know, probably off and on like 5 years now. We don't really stick to one genre or anything.
No, we go all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely been movies that we haven't liked, like Unfriended was one of them, but I think that was fairly universally disliked across the board.
Yeah.
However, there was one movie that we went to go see, and I don't know if you've seen it, Anthony. The Revenant.
Yeah, I've seen it. I didn't see it in theaters, but I saw it like video on demand or something when it was out.
We sat through that entire thing in the theater, and it's probably my least favorite movie that I've seen in theaters. It was so boring. I think I almost fell asleep during that movie.
There is one of them. I'm guilty of this one time. I was really, really tired, and I can't remember what movie it was, but it had a really, really slow start. It was something that we was watching with Ben, but I think that is the one that you fell asleep, like without reason. Like we've gone and we've been tired before, and it's happened, but I did not get it. Me and Ben are both like just sitting there and we're thinking, he's not gonna get his Emmy for this or his Oscar,
His
whatever
Oscar,
he's
yeah.
going for. And everybody else seemed to like it, and I don't get it. What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, I can't give a full answer because I've only seen it once, and I think maybe the performances from like Tom Hardy and fucking Leo. I thought they were all right. Tom Hardy plays just a fucking vicious villain in that, and he's a scary man. He's just super imposing, even though he's probably like a teddy bear in real life. But yeah, I think I watched it once. The bear attack thing was gnarly.
That was probably the most interesting thing about that movie. After that, it really
thing.
slowed down.
Yeah. And then like him being kind of left for dead and having to go through the wilderness. I mean, I'm kind of sucker for like survival stories. I will admit, from what I do remember, it was very long. It felt like, I don't know, every brand new filmmaker relies a lot on like nature shots, and I felt like that's probably like what 75% of that movie was just kind of the nature of wherever it was filmed. I mean, it was gorgeous, but it was also like, I don't really need to watch like a Nat Geo documentary with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Thank you.
And now, in the distance, we can see the slugs intertwining
Yeah.
in the mating dance.
I would love to see a slug mating dance. But yeah, that's hard too. I feel like it's also depending on kind of where you're at during the day and where you are mentally, especially when you're seeing movies late at night. Because I feel like you kind of get to a point where you're like, oh my God, just get it done so I can sleep. I ended up seeing like Aquaman at like a 10 o'clock or 10 p.m. showing, and I didn't get out till I think like 1 or something like that, because that movie is like the like Lord of the Rings movie of superhero films. And I was and I got out and I was like, it was fine. I had a good time, and that's all I really expect from films. But like, I just want to go to bed.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Yeah, I think at least my main contention point was definitely the length. Like, that was like a 3-hour movie, and I think they could have easily fit what they wanted to in an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours.
Yeah.
But
that's always hard. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, because you never really know what the director's artistic vision is for everything. But at least, in my opinion, they could have fit what they wanted into an hour and a half, and it would have made it into a much better film. But we'll never know. And he got his Oscar, so who cares?
Yeah, I guess the only thing that probably like good came out of that film, besides like Leo getting his Oscar before he killed himself, like he would like his last few films up until that. I mean, obviously Leonardo DiCaprio is still alive. I'm like talking about him like as if he's dead, but he is still very well alive. But like,
unfortunately, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. My political bias got in the way there for a second.
But like all the films he kind of did up until that point, like he was really pushing himself for the role. Like he was in like Wolf of Wall Street up until that point, and yeah, he was just like, and he also did Django, where like
Django was good too.
Yeah,
Django is probably one of my favorite movies that I've seen him in.
Yeah,
it is great.
His Great Gatsby, I thought, was really good too.
Yeah, Great Gatsby was a phenomenal film. I was gonna say Django, like going back to Leo hurting himself, like he during the dinner scene where he kind of calls out them, he like cuts open his hand in real life, and smears blood all over the actress's face, and that's his real blood. And it's just like, all right, just give him his Oscar before he like kills anyone, please.
Taking it too far. Gotta stop him.
He's gonna end up like what's his name, Brandon Lee from The Crow.
Oh,
Except he's gonna kill himself instead of somebody else.
Oh, jeez. I wish Brandon Lee was still alive. The Crow is probably one of my favorite films. I've watched that so many times.
I really need to see that movie.
It's great. It's super phenomenal.
That's one of many movies that I have regrettably not seen yet. I've got a list that's probably miles long of stuff that I want to see that I haven't.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna say, like, last thing touching on The Revenant, before moving on. I feel like probably the greatest thing that come out of The Revenant. I know it employed like a bunch of Native American actors, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's super fucking important.
Definitely, yeah.
Equality.
I think
inclusion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hollywood definitely needs to get better at that. That's a step forward.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So, did you have anything to bring to the table there, David?
Oh, just a few things. I don't want to do that one yet. Amazon, or more importantly, the I can't take that stance. I'm not going to take that stance. But anyways, Amazon basically got ran out of New York.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard about that.
HQ2, for anybody who doesn't know what it is, and I don't understand how you could possibly not. It was only a thing for like ever, and many cities battling it out, trying to get Amazon to build an HQ in their location.
Amazon HQ2 Battle Royale.
Exactly. So many cities contending, and Amazon actually pulling a split move there. Nobody saw this one coming. Decided that they would have, and I was actually really excited because they were wanting to branch out of Manhattan, because everybody knows New York City, it's all based in Manhattan. The other four of the five boroughs really don't contribute a whole lot. So Amazon decides they were going to locate half, or at least one half, of HQ2 in Queens. The other half was going somewhere, I believe it's Arlington. It's somewhere around the DC area. And then as a pity treatment for Nashville, since Nashville had their high hopes set on it, gave us an Operations Center for Excellence. So it wasn't HQ2, but it was something for our efforts.
That sounds like a participation trophy.
Exactly.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's pretty much exactly what it was. But anyways, there was massive pushback from local, and it wouldn't be the local leaders that you would think, because both the mayor and the governor were both right on this train. They wanted Amazon. They had all these incentives planned for them and everything. And I guess just local politicians. I forget her name, so I apologize there for that. Anybody who needs to look it up, it was the one who ran in New York that really ran on the socialist side of the Democratic platform and pulled like a huge upset victory. And in November, she was one of the lead activists for it, basically saying, Amazon, we don't want you here. We feel like you can't treat your employees well, this and that. So America's probably biggest company coming up, if they're not the biggest by now, with the world's biggest CEO at this point. I mean, if he's not, Jeff Bezos has got to be up there pretty quick.
I think he is the richest man.
I think he is. I want to say
I think if he isn't, he's probably number 2 or number 3.
Just totally made them pull out the whole deal. Completely pulled out of New York, and it's crazy.
So are they making our participation trophy the new HQ2, or are they still searching?
They're just going to leave it alone as the plans as of right now, or the most up-to-date information as of this recording is they're just leaving it as is, pulling out of New York. Virginia is going to keep what they've got, all the dedicated plans for Virginia and so far Tennessee, Nashville. They're staying as is. We're not supposed to get HQ2, which a lot of people were okay with. Honestly, there's people in Nashville that are wanting to keep Amazon away from us too. It's like, you guys are crazy. But there was a whole bunch of incentives, like Nashville and New York both pulling all these incentives to get Amazon there. Tax deals, this, that, all this stuff, and just all goes away over the minority of a few people.
That's nuts.
That's what happens. I guess that just means that we got a participation trophy for a race that literally nobody won.
Yeah, I haven't looked a ton into the story. I know that they were examining New York for putting their HQ2 there. I wonder if like New York tried to negotiate maybe like better workers' pay or rights or anything. I wonder if there was any type of like pushback from Amazon on that end. I know they recently raised the minimum wage to 15 for Amazon workers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see the full scope of that.
That could have easily been it. I know Amazon hasn't exactly been famous for their treatment of their workers or anything. So I mean, you never know.
Yeah.
So I've got actually, you go ahead with your next topic, Anthony, since we're kind of doing this roundabout thing.
Oh, my next one. Let's see. So I recently bought a book that I am going to be doing research on. It's by Paul Fisher. He is the screenwriter of Into the Dark's The Body, which is like a Hulu Blumhouse horror anthology thing. Mm-hmm. So he wrote the screenplay for that, and he's also one of the I think producers or like looked over production for another episode. So he wrote this book. It's called a Kim Jong-il production. In the extraordinary true story of a kidnapped filmmaker, his star actress, and a young dictator's rise to power. And yeah, it's like super fascinating. A part of this is in about Paul Gassari. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that.
I think I vaguely know about him. I've heard his name before, and I've heard this story of North Korea kidnapping a filmmaker and an actress to like create propaganda films or something like that. But
yeah, so like it's weird because like Kim Jong-il is like a super big like movie buff. Mm-hmm. He like super like loves films, and he kind of requested all these actors and actresses to come, and they basically told him to go fuck himself. And he was like not about it, so he ended up kidnapping like major directors and these actresses to basically make his own Godzilla film. And Paul Gassari is kind of their middle finger to Godzilla, and to the point where like the poster for Paul Gassari says Paul Gassari, the beast that could defeat Godzilla. So yeah, he like kidnapped these people to make a big monster movie, and it's just a super fascinating story that I just recently bought the book for. So it's been a real page turner so far.
I'd be really interested to see if somebody could like smuggle that out of there and translate it so that other people could see it.
There are a couple copies you could probably buy, like black market copies or something like that. My friend Chris from GargantuCast, he was at a convention a couple months back, and someone was selling kind of like a bootleg copy there, I think for like $30 or something. But you can definitely find it. It's probably not the greatest quality or anything. Definitely not like Criterion Collection, but
yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a watch, and hopefully some point in the future this year I might end up doing an episode on kind of the story of Paul Gassari, so that'll be neat.
That is insane. That is actually insane.
Yeah. North Korea is just fucking bonkers.
I've watched more documentaries on North Korea than I care to admit, and everything that's happening over there is literally nuts.
Yeah.
Like they have an entire skyscraper that's sitting on the edge of the DMZ that's literally filled with nobody. It's just there so that people from South Korea can see it. It is
Is that
I have
how
no
far
words
their
to describe
propaganda
it.
train goes? I mean, are they that desperate?
Yeah.
Yes,
You,
they are.
False impressions of.
have
Uh-huh.
you there was a thing I think 2 or 3 years back where Kim Jong Un he like leaked, quote unquote leaked, these documents of like their warheads or something, like warhead tests. But someone like put them through some type of computer and found out they were like falsified and like photoshopped basically, and so they photoshopped missiles to like threaten the U.S. So yeah, they very much care about their image, and it's just kind of nuts.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm so glad that dick measuring contest is over between them two. At least I think it is.
Well, let's hope so. Yeah, I think we've got more issues to worry about stateside than we do from some crazy little bald man with missiles that barely go over his own border. Anyway, well, he's not bald. I forgot. That was his dad.
Yeah.
He's got a nice head of hair.
Yeah, Kim Jong Un's pretty young. I think he's like in his 30s or 40s.
He's fairly young now, yeah. You know, I'm not trying to keep this North Korea train going, but it reminded me of something else. Apparently, I don't know if Kim Jong Un is whatever his name is. I don't know if he's the oldest son, but if he isn't, then this is the second son of the father. Apparently, one of the sons deserted North Korea because he wanted to go to Disney World.
Who wouldn't?
I can't say that I blame him.
So did he go? Did he get photos?
I'm pretty sure he deserted North Korea and went to, I don't know which Disney World it was, but I would assume it's probably the one in Japan.
Yeah, Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
That's hilarious.
It's probably
Just
about as far as he could get before everything turned south on the poor guy.
I don't think he ever went back. He went to Disney World and was like, man, I could stay here, and then he stayed there.
No, jeez. he's in the trash compaction system beneath the streets.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. So I've, in lieu of one gigantic topic, I've kind of got three little ones that I've looked at throughout the week. The first one, and I'm sure the most ubiquitous, is the whole news about the Mars rover, quote unquote, dying.
No.
That poor little thing. Apparently, and I'm sure you guys saw this, but it's oddly poignant, even though it's literally just a status reading that NASA took from it right before it finally shut off. So it's not technically a message that it sent, but it's a status reading that NASA took from it and then made into a sentence. Either way, it's very, very poignant, even if it is about a little Mars rover that's kind of stuck in the middle of nowhere. So it said, my battery is low and it's getting dark.
Oh my god, that's so
How
sad.
is that? This is like, I read that and I'm like, oh my god, I didn't think I could have so many feelings about a robot.
It's Wall-E all over again.
Oh, the poor thing. That plays so well because I was just watching The Martian.
Oh yeah.
Just before that news came out, and one of the things that he had done in the movie was gone to a site where they had a rover that apparently had lost communication years back. I think it was like 16 years back or something like that. And literally he did the same thing. He just uncovered the poor thing from the sand, let it charge, and it was fine. This thing's just sitting there with no battery because it got covered in the dust storm. Maybe somebody can rescue it here in a few years, and it'll be like, hey, I'm back.
You never know. Maybe good old poop potatoes can rescue it.
Hey, you never know.
It won't be NASA anytime soon. The way they're going, it'll have to be Europe or somebody else. Russia can save us.
Yeah,
or good old Elon Musk.
Maybe
there you go. SpaceX.
There you go.
SpaceX to the rescue.
If he's not in prison.
Oh, yeah, who knows? On Joe Rogan's podcast, Smoking a Blunt, who knows what he's going to do next? Jeez.
I mean, not even that.
Isn't he? Isn't there some kind of SEC investigation or something because of fraudulent earnings reports or the threat of selling stock to artificially inflate it or something like that?
Yeah, he made some type of comment about trying to sell stock or about them going up, and he never actually had any intention of doing it, and he got called out on it, and I think basically what ended up happening was he's not allowed to serve on the board of any company for I think like 10 years or something like that. Yeah.
Well,
It was twice. And all of it too was kind of like one big dumb like 420 joke, which is even worse.
Oh,
for
poor
a genius,
guy.
he's a fucking idiot.
He really is. Putting Teslas into space just because he can, and then he goes and pulls a stunt like that. It's like,
yeah, and then
you don't really use that. You don't have any common sense up there, do you?
Yeah, and then the whole like
Apparently
pedophile
not.
thing with like
yeah.
What's this about? I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, a couple. Fuck, I cannot speak English right now. I am
been me the whole
completely.
night.
I'm completely sober. I promise. It happened a couple months ago. I forgot where it was. Was it like Thailand or Vietnam?
I think it was Thailand. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and like this kid, somehow this weird situation happened where this soccer team of kids ended up getting stuck in like a cave, and it was like all over the news. And Elon Musk is like, "Huh, all right, I'm gonna save these kids. I'm gonna build." Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So what happened?
So he ended up basically he ended up saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna build the submarine so you can get the kids out, and it'll help them get out of the cave," and like. I think the police department of whatever that city was in, they basically laughed at Elon Musk. They're like, "No, we're good, thanks." And Elon Musk made some type of comment like, "Why are you saving kids anyway, you like pedo?" And so then later on, yeah. So later on, Elon Musk made a tweet like, "I'm surprised that guy didn't sue me or anything, LOL." And then that guy's lawyer contacted Musk like over Twitter saying, we're filing charges for like defamation of character or something like that. It's too good.
That was an amazing series of events.
Just because they refused his help, he's going to turn an obviously tragic situation into something that needs to be resolved. Because I mean, these poor kids were down there, stuck with water coming in and everything and no way of getting out, talking about scuba diving these poor things, and just because they didn't want his help, he's going to call these people pedophiles because they're trying to save children.
Exactly. Yeah. That's how logic works, right?
Oh my gosh. Didn't realize his mind was so messed up.
That's just it's more proof that your IQ has no correlation to common sense whatsoever.
Obviously not. Jeez. I guess all geniuses are idiots at one point or another.
Yeah, you could say that.
All right,
so, another little mini topic that I brought, Batfleck is no longer a thing.
Rested.
Finally.
Rip in peace.
I was on board when they announced that before they did the Justice League movie, but man, after that train wreck, that was probably the worst decision they could have made to replace Christian Bale like ever. That was awful. Bye bye Batfleck.
Let's petition Steve Buscemi as the new Batman.
Oh yes, please. He would be great.
Yeah.
Hello, fellow kids.
Hello, fellow villains. I'm gonna
What you mean,
wallop
homie?
ya.
And then my last little thing. You guys might not care, but this is a big deal to me. Way back yonder, before Disney bought out Lucasfilm, who knows when, I can't even remember the year that they did that. Way back then, there was what fans referred to as the extended universe, and it was basically books and other pieces of media that existed outside of the actual Star Wars films that Lucasfilm in like the 80s or 90s basically said, yeah, do whatever you want. It's all canon. So, people did whatever they want. They do what they do. And some great pieces of media came out of this. But when Disney bought the rights to Star Wars, they were like, yeah, so we're going to keep doing our thing, but your thing is no longer a thing. We're not going to say that you can't write anything anymore, but it's not canon. So, good luck with that. And now, after all of the backlash that they're getting from Solo and from the Last Jedi, both of which I thought were perfectly serviceable movies. I don't know why people got all uppity about them, but now they're saying that they're open to looking back into all of these books and things, and they might make some movies out of it. They might make some TV shows now, kind of biting their own or putting their own foot in their mouth, I guess.
Is this a case of Disney's admitting they can't do squat, and they're just going to go back to what was already done and admit defeat there, basically? Is that what's going on?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Classic Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Anything, I was so hoping that this was not going to be the case. But it seems like anything they touch that they did not come up with just turns to garbage in one way or another. I don't understand what it is about. Maybe it's because they're too focused about money or something. I don't get it.
The only thing that they haven't, well, I don't want to say ruined, but they haven't ruined. But I don't know if they've really had a real hand in the Marvel movies anyway. But the Marvel movies.
Well,
that's the one property that they've bought. No, they've had Marvel for
10 years.
A long time, yeah.
10 years.
I know, but they're using that as its own. It's so far from what I can tell, they're separate. And I don't think they've incorporated too much of the actual Disney people into it, as far as I can tell.
Supposedly Lucasfilm was supposed to be separate too, but, that doesn't really mean anything, obviously.
I feel like, and people can get on my case about this, and this will be the hill I die on. But, I mean, Star Wars fans I feel it's fair to say, are fairly fickle people, too.
Yeah.
And, it was probably dumb of Disney to, kind of, retcon the books, especially because some phenomenal stories from what I hear have come from them. I'm not a big Star Wars fan. I could give a shit. I respect them for what they are and their place in pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not my cup of tea.
That's understandable.
But I feel like, all the kind of classic Star Wars fans now are 40-year-old men who aren't happy with anything. And it feels like anything they've done with the newer films, I feel like a lot of that backlash just comes from these older people kind of just wishing things were the way they were before.
Yeah. And
it's not impossible to do something new and different, but I don't know. I at least with the Marvel films, Kevin Feige, who is kind of the header of the Marvel Universe, has said that he's kind of had a formulated plan since the beginning of the Marvel Universe. He's kind of had a Bible of how things were going to go, at least leading up to Infinity War. And I don't know.
Yeah, that definitely shows in the way that they've stitched together everything.
Yeah, and I feel like probably I don't know how true that is with like the Star Wars films, like if they really went into this with a plan, or they're just like, okay, we'll do this movie by movie and figure it out. So yeah,
it seems like that's kind of what they did, because the Force Awakens, most people likened it to A New Hope.
Yeah.
There was a lot of the same plot threads in it, which I didn't have a big issue with. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
It's more Star Wars. I'm all about that. But when The Last Jedi came out, people were expecting it to be one thing, and it turned out to be totally different. And I think that's where the disparity comes in, as far as where people land on it. Because I came into it with no expectations whatsoever. I was like, cool, more Star Wars. I'm down for it. Give it to me. And then there's these other subset of fans that are like pouring all over the trailers and all over the posters and whatever other pieces of media they could get their hands on before the movie was out, and theorizing about it. And then they come in expecting one thing, getting something completely different, and something that they're maybe not 100% on board with, and they get all pissy just because it's not meeting their quote-unquote expectations.
Well, there's a lot of companies that do that. They heavily alter, if not blatantly falsify the trailers so that nothing is given away. Disney's good for it, which may be where they got into it with the latest Star Wars here. I didn't have a problem at all with The Last Jedi, and yet there's a lot. I think you might be right about that, but there's a lot of information that was in the trailer that I think they just pieced together wrong. It wasn't necessarily falsified or blatantly just footage that is never going to be used and was completely made just for a trailer, just to have something.
Yeah.
I didn't see a correlation there. It's like, what are you guys misinterpreting here? Why are you so mad? I don't get it. I really don't. Not with that one. Solo, Rogue One, maybe. But I don't see what's wrong with The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Who knows?
That is a good point. Who does know?
Yeah.
Not the three of us.
No. Okay, David. What you got? Lay it on me.
All right. So, it's literally in my docs, and I don't know if we really wanted to go back to Tesla. So I decided to modify this segment just a bit. The original aspect I was going for here is, if Tesla is supposed to be creating this new market or advancing a new technology and going all out on the electric vehicle, why do they make them so large? If you're going for efficiency and you're going for the masses, why do they freaking cost so damn much? Nobody can buy these things. They're expensive, they're large, they're not very efficient. You can't get what you want out of electric vehicles if you're going the route that Tesla is going.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand of Elon Musk's mission statement from the very beginning, I think the general idea was to sell to kind of like an upper class market. That way, like with future cars down the road, they could sell to kind of the middle class. And that kind of speaks true with like the Model 3 that recently came out like a year or two ago. It was kind of more of an affordable vehicle. I think the general idea was to kind of, let's sell to the upper class, let's make our money, and then we can use that to start maybe production on other vehicles so we could sell to kind of the middle class and under. Because they're still a startup company and they're still running off of like venture capital and everything. And they don't necessarily have the factories that like say like Ford or Chevrolet has. They don't have those resources.
No, they don't have anything. In fact, that's one of their biggest problems is they have no, well, they're starting to now, but they have no mass production whatsoever. And that's where I was, and okay, maybe if it was the mission statement that they wanted to try to focus in small groups, make it large, make it big, make it expensive, sell to the upper echelon, get some money into it, and then start ramping up smaller production vehicles at a mass rate so that the costs come down. Sure. But I don't see it happening, and I guess that's my issue with it. Their quality is terrible on the Model 3. They've got cars coming out with paint defects all over them. They've got panel gaps on one side of the car that are like twice the size of panel gaps on the other side of the car. They've pitched tents outside factories to put cars in so they can make them literally in the parking lot. I'm sorry, that is not how this should be done.
Yeah.
And that is my issue here. If they're trying to fast forward electric vehicles because they're good for the economy, whatever, or the environment, maybe the economy too, depending on how much money you have to pump into it on electric bills and repairs or whatever the case may be, you can't build it in a tent outside a factory. I'm sorry. That doesn't work. People are not going to buy a car that they look at and physically can find paint defects all over it, brand new, delivered from Tesla. What gives with that?
Yeah, they're not doing themselves very many favors as far as legitimizing themselves go. If that's what they're doing,
Yeah.
that's pretty bad.
That's my biggest argument right there. They're not legitimizing any of this to me. To me, they're making it look all worse.
Yeah, I think the biggest part is probably they're going through growing pains. I mean, they're still very much a very young company.
Mm-hmm.
And they, could never anticipate, having to cover all of this and how much they'd actually sell. And so, yeah, I mean, it's hard to watch, but, hopefully they can kind of get past these growing pains.
Okay.
They definitely need to if they're gonna legitimize themselves in the electric car market, because don't get me wrong, those vehicles are if I could have one, I would buy one like right now. They do gorgeous.
Look really nice, but they're not.
But at the same
they're not.
But at the same time,
for people like us,
yeah,
or
exactly.
anybody else who's higher up, it's like, what's the Model X go for? Like $170-something thousand or something like that.
Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah,
it's a lot of money.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
But I think the new model, the biggest one that they had production issues with was, I think, like 30 grand, something within there. I mean, it's still a lot of money, of course, for a car, but it's more in the terms for the middle class, which I guess is better. And then I guess they do have plans too to kind of make some type of like truck, I guess. So I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, it definitely doesn't look good.
Well, hopefully they'll get past all that. We'll just have to wait and see. You never know.
Yeah, if Elon Musk doesn't turn into Lex Luthor beforehand.
Well, I mean, he's not on the board anymore. So what more? What can
exactly?
do, right?
That's his superhero or supervillain origin story. They kicked me off the board. I need revenge. And so then he, makes a mech suit and destroys a bunch of Teslas and makes a base on the moon or some shit.
He wouldn't destroy all the Teslas. He would program the Teslas so that they would all fly together and then create the mech suit.
There you go.
He would be like he would create Mecha Godzilla out of Teslas.
Mecha Musk.
Just make him a Tony Stark super Iron Man suit out of his leftover parts or something.
Poor Elon Musk.
He's getting trashed on a lot in this episode, which is why I was like, do I go back to Tesla or not? But it's my automotive section that I expanded out of. So
it's always fun to make fun of somebody that's way out of your league. You gotta punch up sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody else have anything they would like to discuss?
Yeah, my Toyota's not looking very good right now. So I was like,
okay.
I kind of wanted to bring it up, mentioning companies that are doing things I don't think they should be doing. Toyota's making a new Supra. A lot of people love the classic one from the 90s and stuff. Lord knows Fast and Furious sure did. They sure did a lot with that car. Things that shouldn't have happened. Rest in peace, Paul. Just sad story when that happened.
Man, this is a roller coaster of emotions right now.
But their new one is made by BMW, of all people. You're going to take Toyota's name and you're going to put BMW parts in that? There goes the reliability right there. Anybody that knows anything about poor BMW knows those things are not meant to last.
Yeah, you're telling me. Jeez.
It's like, just make it a... why are you making it a BMW car and just slapping your badge on it? You've got nothing going in it. Their engine is not going in it. It's a BMW engine. It's a BMW transmission. It's like, what are you guys doing? You're going to put your name on this? You're supposed to be known for reliability and efficiency and everything, and you're going to do that.
Maybe BMW just had nothing better to do.
Yeah, nothing going on.
Well, let's give it to Toyota. They know how to move cars.
Well, yeah. But they're not the one making it, are they?
Who?
Toyota.
No, apparently not. There's literally nothing. I don't think there's anything they are making. Or at least nothing important.
No. Sucks for them.
Yep. Anyways, that's the end of my automotive rant.
Okay. I think that we're at about an hour and a half, so I think that's probably where we should cap it off then. All right. Thank you to everybody for popping in. Thanks to David and Anthony for co-hosting this with me tonight. Hopefully, you guys had fun discussing literally everything and nothing all at once.
Yeah, I had a good time. Thanks for having me on.
It was a blast.
It was a blast. I fucking hated it.
If anything, I gotta listen to more of Anthony. This is good.
See, there you go. I got you one more person, Anthony.
Great. Thanks.
You brought a lot more interesting stuff than I did to this. He did a much better job than I did. I'm just saying that.
No. You did a good job. I enjoyed your little spiel on Star Wars and such.
But yeah, thank you to everybody for coming out and watching. Please drop a rating and everything if you're listening on iTunes or wherever you're listening. When this goes live, we'll be live on everything. So if you're having trouble finding us, then it's not my problem. Anyway, yeah, exactly. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Peace.
This episode of Podcast Period was produced and edited by me, Ben, and co-hosted by David. Special thanks once again to my friend Anthony from Something Ghoulish and the podcast Ghoulish Cast. You can find his show anywhere you can find a podcast, and you can find him on Instagram and Twitter at Ghoulish Show. I'm Ben Plays Vidyas on Twitter. That's Ben Plays VIDYAS. You can find David on Twitter at Car6Spy16. And you can find the show on Twitter and Instagram at Podcast Period. We are bi-weekly on Wednesdays, so we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks for listening.